Exposed. How a pizza delivery girl's amazing gesture saved a ruined man in just 3 days. Mark stood helplessly in the middle of his cluttered living room, the weight of unpaid bills pressing down on him like the leaden sky outside. Just days ago, he'd been a respected architect. Now the stinging betrayal of an unjust layoff clawed at his stomach. Unable to shake off the terrible sense of failure, he clenched his fists, fighting against the despair. Was he now just a cautionary tale? As rain pelleted the roof like a relentless drum, he trudged home from the empty streets of the town. He could almost hear his father's voice echoing in his mind, calling for persistence. But the gravity of Mark's struggle was more pervasive than the favor of hard work. It swallowed his hope whole. Would his father understand that it wasn't laziness but a cloud of calamity that mocked his every effort? Mark was a man racing against time, desperately trying to be the provider his father had raised him to be. Just then, a knock at the door pulled him from his spiral of thought. With a heavy heart, he opened to find a young woman with a bright smile and a pizza box in hand. Lucy, the local delivery girl, radiated an unyielding optimism. "Pizza for Mark," she chirped, the warmth of her presence illuminating the dim room. He managed a faint smile, aware of the stark contrast between her bubbly energy and the depths of his despair. "Just what I needed," he mumbled, half-heartedly attempting a joke. "Pizza to drown my sorrows." Her laughter danced in the air, slicing through the thick cloud of his gloom. "You can't let this ruin your life," she replied, her voice earnest. "Every setback is a chance to start anew." Those words hung in the air, a flicker of hope piercing the heavy fog around his heart. But how could he dare believe in such promises when the evidence of despair surrounded him? As he closed the door, the warmth of her words lingered. That night, as he ate alone, he found himself contemplating her encouragement. Could he reclaim his passion for architecture? With bills looming and his mind racing, the thought felt absurd, yet irresistibly magnetic. The next morning, he awoke with a sudden surge of determination. Taking a deep breath, he resolved to volunteer for the community park's revitalization project. But as he dove into the details, he discovered whispers of his former boss sowing distrust, orchestrating a shadowy plan to sabotage his efforts. Fear knotted in his stomach. How had he fallen so far? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension tightened around him as he wrestled with his situation. He was a lone wolf trying to revive a community project while fighting an invisible war. At every corner, reminders of his past failure haunted him. Would he be able to stand tall against such powerful adversaries? Confusion clouded his thoughts. As he prepared for a crucial meeting, a sudden call from his father shattered the little hope he had managed to gather. "Mark." His father's voice trembled on the line, revealing a family secret that could change everything. The revelation struck him like a thunderbolt, instantly redirecting his focus and faith. Standing helplessly at the crossroads of ambition, he was faced with a dilemma that threatened to pull him into a deeper abyss. Would he chase redemption and success at any cost? Or would he remain true to the values instilled in him since childhood? The stakes had never been this high, and the answer hung precariously in the air, shimmering like the rain-soaked streets outside, relentless in its pursuit of resolution. Mark stood by the window, the rain still drumming against the glass while he struggled to process his father's words. What secret could possibly underlie his family's narrative, and why had it been kept from him for so long? The ground beneath him felt uncertain, like quicksand ready to swallow him whole. Could the truth be the anchor he desperately needed to regain his footing? Pulling himself from that thought, Mark recalled Lucy's encouragement, the bright energy she exuded like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Perhaps he could channel her vitality into harnessing his own potential. He decided to tackle the community park project despite the sabotage looming from his former boss. The threat hung like a guillotine, but Mark couldn't afford to let fear dictate his choices any longer. In the days that followed, he began to rediscover the architect within him. Late nights were spent drafting design plans with painstaking detail, and he found himself fueled by a passion he thought was extinguished. Each stroke of the pen felt like a step toward reclamation, not just of his career but of his identity. Then came the moment of truth. Mark secured a tentative meeting with the local council to present his vision for the park's revitalization, an opportunity he couldn't let slip away. The dread of potential confrontation with his old employer gnawed at his nerves, but Mark latched onto an unexpected resolve. He had value to offer beyond the shadow cast by his past. The morning of the meeting arrived, brightened by a warm sun that promised rebirth. Clad in a professional outfit that had lost its dust, he paced in front of the council members, his heart thumping in sync with the cadence of his rising confidence. As he unveiled his plans for the park, each word he spoke became crystal clear, resonating with an authority that had been lulled into submission for far too long. The designs illustrated eco-friendly transformations, with spaces that invited community gatherings, a direct response to the fractures caused by previous neglect. But as he wrapped up his presentation with hopeful anticipation hanging in the air, a voice echoed from the back of the room. It was his former boss, a figure that loomed large in the hall, eyes dark with scorn. "Mark, do you really think the community needs you after the fiasco you left behind?" It was a thorn strategically laid to puncture his newfound aspirations. A wave of uncertainty struck, but a flicker of defiance sparked within Mark. "This isn't just about the past," he replied, willing his voice to remain steady. "It's about moving forward together." His mind raced as he confronted the very man who had dismissed his capabilities. This was more than just a meeting. It was a chance to reclaim not only his dignity, but his place as an architect of change. Yet with every point he made, he felt the ire of his former boss rise, a furious storm ready to unleash. The words that would surely sour the meeting hung palpably in the air, threatening to unravel everything he had worked for. Would this encounter derail his burgeoning confidence, or would it galvanize his resolve? Mark could feel the precipice of change beneath him. The council members' eyes shifted nervously between the two, a quiet tension knitting itself around them all. In that moment, he realized he had a choice: to crumble under the weight of criticism or to rise, fortified by the conviction that change mirrored resilience. The outcome dangled in uncertainty, but one thing was certain: the battle for his identity had begun, and he was more determined than ever to fight for it. And as the glances exchanged between his former boss and the council hinted at deeper conflicts, Mark prepared for the reality check that lay ahead. Would he successfully helm the revitalization project? Or would it be yet another chance slipped through his fingers? He tightened his grip on the paper in his hands. The moment of truth was drawing near, and he needed to be ready to confront not just his past, but every challenge the future held. Mark held his breath as silence enveloped the room, stretching into an uncomfortable eternity. He could feel the weight of his former boss's disdain pressing against him. The council members looked from one man to the other, sensing the palpable tension. "You think they'll believe you can lead this project?" His former boss sneered, leaning slightly forward, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're just a has-been." With each word, Mark felt a fire igniting within him. He had spent years drowning beneath the expectations and failures that had become his identity. But today was about reclaiming that identity, not just for himself, but for every ounce of creativity he still believed was within him. "No," he said, his voice firm and unyielding. "I believe they need someone who understands the community and what it means to rebuild trust. This project isn't just another title for you, it's a lifeline for the people." His ex-boss's narrowed eyes glimmered with hostility. The tension bristled like a live wire, each council member holding their breath, teetering between tension and expectation. Mark pushed forward, determined to muster every lingering ounce of hope. "Everything I've proposed here is a reflection of what people actually want. I've listened, not just to the complaints, but to dreams for a better space. There was something electrifying about saying it out loud. The audacity of speaking his truth, of asserting that he had something valuable to offer, reaffirmed the conviction simmering beneath his skin. This was his opportunity to break free from the narratives defined by others. Before his former boss could respond, Mark shifted his focus to the council members. "I would like to hear your feedback. What do you envision for this space?" The boldness of the question startled him. It was not just a pivot in dialogue. It was an invitation to engage, a risk laden with vulnerability. The council members exchanged glances, their apprehensions visibly lessening. A woman with short gray hair, the head of the council, finally spoke up. "I think we could innovate further on the community aspects you've suggested. Perhaps we could integrate volunteer programs into the design." Mark nodded vigorously, relief flooding his system. This was the fresh air he needed, the approval that fueled his sense of purpose. As more ideas emerged from the council, he intuitively navigated their suggestions, weaving them into his vision. Each exchanged thought felt like a brick being laid down, rebuilding both the project and his self-worth. Yet the shadow of his former boss remained like a thundercloud overhead. As the meeting progressed, Mark's focus faltered momentarily, the ghost of doubt rearing its head. Could he truly follow this through? By the time the session concluded, he felt exhilarated but uneasy at the prospect of conflict that awaited in the parking lot. On the drive home, Mark's mind raced with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The voice of his former boss echoed in his ears. "You're a has-been." Could he shake off that label so easily? No matter how fiercely he had fought back in front of the council, he knew that the true battle lay ahead, beyond the boardroom walls and into the world he had long felt disconnected from. As he parked his car and stepped into his dimly lit apartment, anxiety flooded his thoughts once again. He grabbed a sketch pad, determined to capture the energy of the meeting while it was still fresh. The lines danced before him, shapes and colors morphing fluidly into the designs that had sparked something deep inside. Each detail began to unfold, embodying hope, but shadows of self-doubt loitered at the edges. Reality seemed a tough teacher. Patience and resilience had no guarantees. Would this newfound energy empower him against the lurking specter of failure? Just as he completed the first design, a knock interrupted his solitude. Heart racing, Mark opened the door to find Lucy standing there, an encouraging smile on her face. "I heard about your presentation. Can I come in?" Caught off guard, he hesitated, wondering if he was ready to share his immense hope and fear with her. But behind him loomed the darkness of his self-doubt, and this moment could either plunge him deeper into uncertainty or lead him back into the light. He stepped aside for Lucy to enter, apprehensive but eager to find out what lay ahead. As whispers of inspiration stirred in the air between them, Mark knew one thing: the ground beneath him was shifting once more, beckoning him to explore the depths of his potential, no matter how terrifying. How would he navigate this evolving landscape of personal discovery and rekindled ambition? Mark motioned for Lucy to take a seat on the small, worn couch that dominated his living room. As she settled in, he felt an electric spark of possibility flow through him. It was as if her presence could illuminate the shadows that still lurked in the corners of his mind. For the first time in months, he sensed he might be able to share the weight he had been carrying. He offered her a drink and returned with 2 cups of tea. They sat in silence for a moment, the quiet between them thick with unspoken words. Mark gathered his thoughts, feeling the urge to reach out. He needed encouragement, but also sought clarity on how to fumble toward progress. "I had a breakthrough today, but I'm still grappling with all of it." Lucy tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. What happened? Her simple question invited him to unveil the layers of his experience. He recounted the council meeting, speaking with fervor about how he had embraced vulnerability, inviting feedback instead of dictating plans. As the words tumbled out, he saw her expression evolve from interest to admiration. "That's incredible, Mark. You turned confrontation into collaboration," she said softly, the warmth in her voice bolstering his resolve. But self-doubt hissed from the shadows. "But what if it's not enough? What if they see right through me?" Despite his momentary victory, the thought of rejection surfaced like an insistent tide. Lucy leaned forward, her expression earnest. "You're more capable than you think. You have the heart and the vision. Focus on that." Her encouragement rang true yet felt fragile against the haunted whispers of his former boss. The contrast was stark. Her belief in him felt like a lifeline, but the echo of the dismissive has-been draped over his shoulders like a heavy coat. "I feel like I'm on the edge of something great," he confessed. "But it's terrifying. What if I can't follow through?" The vulnerability in his voice hung between them, palpable and raw. Lucy didn't shy away. She remained steady, meeting his gaze. "Then you'll find a way to adapt, just like you always have. What matters is that you keep moving forward, despite your fear." In that moment, a realization dawned upon Mark. He had been so focused on the outcome that he had overlooked the journey itself. The evolution of his ideas, the development of his skills, and the small triumphs he managed against the odds were all victories that hadn't dimmed, even in the face of uncertainty. Encouraged by Lucy's conviction, he leaned into this newfound perspective, starting to draw connections between what he envisioned for the project and what he had neglected in his own life. Courage. It wasn't merely the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward regardless of it. "Maybe it's time to confront that ghost," he said suddenly, the determination rising within him. "Maybe I have to face my former boss, not for approval, but to redefine myself." Lucy's eyes widened, her interest piqued once more. "What are you thinking?" "I need to find ways to show not just him but everyone that I'm not finished yet," Mark declared, a plan crystallizing in his mind. He wanted to assemble a preview of the project he had proposed, a tangible manifestation of what he could accomplish, documenting every step, from the initial sketches to the evolving ideas born from the council meeting, might solidify his conviction and genuinely engage with the community. He could showcase his resilience and creativity rather than allowing the past to define him. Mark began imagining hands-on workshops, collaborative designs, even community participation in shaping the project itself. Each detail sparked enthusiasm, turning nebulous aspirations into concrete, actionable steps. Lucy broke into a smile. "That's amazing. You have a clarity of vision that others will respond to." "It's powerful." The frisson of excitement surged within him, and for the first time in a long while, he could envision a path forward, one where he wasn't tethered by bygone failures but instead propelled by the momentum of his rebirth. The conversation flowed as ideas bounced between them, each one igniting fresh inspiration. But the pulse of urgency quickened in Mark's chest. The specter of his self-doubt loomed ever larger as he realized that reclaiming his narrative would also mean establishing boundaries, confronting critics and shoring up the resources needed for the journey ahead. How far was he willing to confront those entrenched perceptions to ensure he didn't spiral back into despair? And would he find the courage to grab hold of the reins of his future, even if it meant facing a reckoning with the person he had once been? With renewed commitment, Mark spent the following day mapping out the details of his project. The crisp edge of paper met the roughness of pencil lead as he sketched ideas, forming a web of ambitions that had once seemed impossible to weave. Each stroke gave life to concepts he had long shelved, and as he filled the page, a heady thrill chased away the shadows of self-doubt. He decided to reach out to a few former colleagues who had always seen potential in him, people who could bring diverse perspectives to his plans. Encouraging a roundtable dialogue would not only deepen his project, but also provide him the support he needed to bolster his confidence. Together, they could navigate the nuances of collaboration and task intricacies, reinforcing his belief that he wasn't just a relic of past failures, but behind his burgeoning excitement loomed an unsettling fear. What if their disbelief crystallized into reality when confronted with his proposals? This thought gnawed at Mark as he prepared to meet Lucy later in the afternoon. Despite their encouraging conversation, the question lingered like an unwanted guest. Was he truly ready to face those judgments? They met at a local cafe filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the murmur of busy patrons. Mark spotted Lucy by the window, her demeanor radiant, reflecting the sun filtering through autumn leaves. Her warmth was infectious, a sharp contrast to the unease weaving through him. "Mark, you seem different," she remarked, her excitement palpable as she gestured for him to sit. "I'm trying to be different," he admitted, shifting in his seat as he placed his notes on the table. "But I'm afraid of falling short. The past is always waiting to break through the door." Lucy leaned forward, eyebrows knitting together in concern. "You can't let that fear define you. Every successful person has faced doubts and setbacks. What matters is how you respond." Nodding, Mark carefully unfolded his plans, revealing sketches that had begun to morph into coherent ideas. As she scanned the pages, her eyes danced with intrigue and anticipation. "I love this," she exclaimed, pointing at a collaborative workshop he had envisioned. "This has the potential to bring people together. You're not just selling ideas. You're inviting participation." Her enthusiasm anchored his wavering spirit. For the first time in months, he felt tethered not just to his ambitions, but also to a sense of belonging that had long eluded him. As they refined each element of the project together, Mark's courage solidified, and with it a nagging thought followed. Wouldn't it be great to confront his former boss sooner than later? The more they discussed the potential impacts of his initiative, the more Mark envisioned standing against the specter of his past, his previous boss, a formidable figure who had never believed in him. His narrative was no longer fixed in failure. It was now a dynamic tapestry woven with grit. "Maybe I should arrange a presentation to my old team," he suggested tentatively. "I could show them what I've learned, what I'm capable of." Lucy's eyes lit up. "That would be bold, but it might also be your turning point. If you can own your journey and frame it with your newfound vision, you'll be reclaiming that power, Mark." Confidence surged through him, swelling with each affirmation she offered. Yet layers of anxiety fluttered beneath his resolve. Was this pursuit of validation worth stepping into the ring with a past that once crushed him? "Okay, I'll do it," he finally declared, his heart pounding with uncertainty but firm in resolve. "I'll face him. Not as the man he once mocked, but as something stronger." Lucy nodded approvingly, her expression a blend of pride and encouragement. "You've transformed fear into growth, and that's commendable. Mark, this isn't just about your project, but about reclaiming who you are." They left the cafe, and as Mark stepped into the evening light, he felt a flicker of hope, a small flame kindled by his willingness to embrace the unknown. Yet beneath it all pulsed a growing apprehension. Would he find success, or extend his pain into a confrontation that could shatter his confidence yet again? The weight of the decision pressed down as he recalled the faces of his former colleagues, the potential skeptics he would have to convince. The stakes had never been higher, but neither had the opportunity to redefine what it meant to him. Tomorrow promised a clear call to action. What awaited him when he confronted his past could either solidify his growth or unravel what little he had built. The air was thick with tension, and for the first time, he sensed that change was imminent, a moment on the precipice of something new. Would he step off that edge, armed solely with his newly discovered courage? As dawn broke the following day, Mark's mind raced with the impending presentation. He lay awake for hours, thoughts tangling in a web of anticipation and dread. The moments replayed in his mind, laughter from past meetings, his boss's dismissive tones echoing like a mocking refrain. The profound fear of facing a judgmental crowd gnawed at him, yet their faces had begun to shift. They no longer appeared as voices from the past, but rather as a new audience for an unfolding narrative he was carving out for himself. He stood up, energized by a flicker of determination. This was not merely about redemption. It was a chance to establish a new identity, one where he could redefine his narrative on his own terms. With renewed vigor, he grabbed his notebook and crafted a compelling outline for his presentation. It needed to convey his journey, not just the project itself, stitching together his failures and triumphs into a single cohesive story. As the minutes ticked by, Mark found himself rehearsing aloud, pacing his small living room. He practiced iterating the lessons he had learned, allowed for vulnerability in admitting past mistakes, and highlighted the value his new project could create. Each word propelled him closer to the integrity he yearned to embody. Mark arrived at his old office, anxiety fluttering involuntarily in his stomach as he entered the familiar space. The sight of the modern open floor plan, with bright lights casting an unyielding glare, reminded him of his previous existence here. A realm ruled by expectation and the weight of judgment. Taking a deep breath, he walked towards the conference room, steeling himself for the encounter. When he stepped inside, he was met with skeptical glances. His former colleagues fronted their usual roles, eyes narrowing, scrutinizing the man they once labeled a failure. Their faces mirrored a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. This shift ignited a flicker of hope in him. He was not the same Mark they remembered. He cleared his throat, voice steady. Thank you all for coming. Today I want to share not just my project but also the journey I've taken to get here. The slide projector flickered to life, illuminating the first image, a collage of his sketches and ideas. As he spoke, his passion surfaced, not just for the project but for his narrative of resilience. He spoke not just of his aspirations, but also the scars of rejection that shaped him, moments of vulnerability linked to pride as he showcased the potential for collaboration, the heartbeat of success woven within the fabric of shared experiences. Responses trickled in slowly after his presentation, and the initial tension eased slightly. Mark noticed nodding heads. Curiosity transformed into engagement as questions flew his way, seeking clarification and potential. With each exchange, he realized that he was not just defending his vision but inviting them to part of it, dismantling the barriers that once isolated him. An unexpected voice piped up from the back, the one he had dreaded facing most. Mark, how do we know this won't just be another fleeting thought? His former boss asked, confident yet distant. The question hung in the air, both a challenge and an anchor. Yet Mark found newfound resolve. Because this time, it's personal. This isn't just an idea, it's a representation of my growth, my commitment to not just dream, but to execute. I am no longer here to seek validation, I'm here to share a vision. The room fell quiet. The challenge met with a breadth of introspection. Mark's heart raced, the pulse of uncertainty hastening but surprisingly exhilarating. This confrontation was not a return to an oppressive past, but a stepping stone toward a future he could grasp wholeheartedly. As he wrapped up, a sense of camaraderie began to ripple through the room, a feeling of shared purpose. Yet, he couldn't shake off the piercing thought nagging at the edges of his triumph. What if his boss's skepticism persisted? With the meeting concluding, Mark stepped out, a mixture of hope and apprehension within. He had faced his past, yet lingering shadows whispered doubts. Had he truly turned the tide, or was this just a momentary flicker in the ongoing battle of self-belief? Tomorrow loomed, and uncertainty danced on the horizon. Would he emerge unscathed, ready to shape his future? Or would the remnants of his past entangle him in unexpected ways as he moved forward? The next morning arrived with a weight that pressed heavily on Mark's chest. The brief spark of hope from yesterday's presentation was dulled by the relentless return of his doubts. He poured himself a cup of coffee, the steam curling upward like the worries twisting in his mind. How could he build on the foundation he had begun yesterday? Each sip felt like a small gesture of defiance against the lingering fear of failure. He took a moment to reflect on his plan. His boss's question had unsettled him, revealing a crack in the confidence he had so carefully constructed. To prove the viability of his project, he knew he needed to gather more support, symbolizing not just his vision but a tangible community around it. Each step forward would not merely signify progress. It had to be a strategy, interlacing the threads of trust, capability, and resilience he was attempting to weave. After a few hours of contemplation, Mark sat down, revisiting his presentation materials. The project had potential, yes, but potential relies heavily on execution. This time he turned to his notebook, writing a list of names, colleagues who might be willing to offer insights or collaborate. He needed to engage not just in dialogue but create an environment ripe for feedback and innovation. Could he tap into the expertise around him instead of facing skepticism alone? At the workplace, he entered cautiously, scanning the office layout that had once felt stifling. Familiar faces lingered, some still regarding him with skepticism, others showing slight curiosity. It was a landscape painted with flickers of acceptance, fragments of uncertainty, and the faint scent of hope wafting beneath the surface. Today was no longer about the past. It was about the future he was ready to forge. "Hey, Mark," a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Sarah, a former colleague, who approached him, her approach tinged with tentative optimism. "I heard about your presentation. It was pretty great. Do you need any help moving this project forward?" Her question was unexpected, a ray of light breaking through the clouds of his self-doubt. "Actually, I'd love to collaborate," he said, surprised at his straightforwardness. The conversation flowed, and with it, Mark discovered not only Sarah's expertise in project management, but also a shared enthusiasm for creating something meaningful. Days turned into a whirlwind of brainstorming sessions, late-night calls, and shared laughter over pizza, and with each interaction, Mark found himself softening the armor he had fought so hard to wear. Sarah's insights were invaluable. She challenged his assumptions and broadened his perspective. Together they drafted plans, mapped out the stages of rollout, and set strategic timelines. The project was gradually becoming more concrete, undeniably tethered to collective ambition. Yet even as Mark surged forward, a seed of worry took root. How would their colleagues react when they saw him actively shifting gears? Was this newfound teamwork strong enough to combat his boss's concerns? The looming shadow of skepticism still felt omnipresent. Despite his progress, it tugged at the edges of his confidence, warning him that success was never guaranteed. As he stood up from their meeting one afternoon, Mark noticed a flyer on the bulletin board in the break room advertising a company innovation contest. His pulse quickened. This could be the platform he needed to showcase their work and solidify its potential in a public setting, perhaps even a formal council of decision-makers. It was a chance to put his willingness to face criticism on full display and to confront the very nerve that had pinned him down for years. Mark glanced at Sarah, who was deep in thought, her fingers tapping rhythmically against her notebook. "How do you feel about entering this contest together?" he proposed, adrenaline coursing through him as he recognized the leap he was about to take. Her eyes widened, excitement sparking in her gaze. "Absolutely. This could be the breakthrough we need." As they began planning for the contest, each detail they honed in felt like an affirmation of their collective commitment. Yet, in the recesses of Mark's mind, the haunting question lingered. Would their hard work be enough to quell the skepticism he had faced, or would the shadows of doubt continue to loom large? Tomorrow's contest was just around the corner, a defining moment ready to challenge everything he had built. Could he really face the storm unscathed? Or would past failures come crashing back to remind him of his limits? The answer lay just a day ahead, and with it the pulse of fear became intoxicating. The air was ripe with anticipation as Mark paced back and forth, his thoughts racing in tandem with his heart. The day had arrived, and with it, an exhilarating blend of anxiety and determination coursed through him. Preparations for the innovation contest loomed in the foreground. He could already envision the audience full of eyes scrutinizing their every move. Mark's fingers tightened instinctively around the pages of their presentation, a ritual meant to provide reassurance, yet, deep down, the knot of fear only tightened. He drew in a measured breath, drawing on the quiet strength developed over the previous weeks. As he faced the mirror in his small office, he examined his reflection. The worn features spoke of struggle, yet they also hinted at the resilience that had begun to blossom. Today was no longer just a contest. It was a pivotal opportunity for transformation. He had to convince not only the executive panel but himself that his ideas mattered. Mark stole glances at his well-prepared notes, the midnight scrawls of plans merging with the structured outlines Sarah had meticulously crafted during their late-night discussions. Each bullet point now reflected not simply an idea, but the collaboration that had ignited a spark in him. He couldn't afford to falter. The potential for success echoed louder than the whispers of doubt, which today felt suffocated beneath the burgeoning confidence forged in their team. Arriving with Sarah, they navigated the corridors of their workplace, their earlier insecurities intertwined with a shared purpose. They exchanged glances laden with unspoken resolve as colleagues buzzed around them, the thrill of competition palpable in the air. Yet familiar faces harbored the skepticism that had haunted him, and Mark braced himself against the specter of doubt looming unfathomably close. In the contest room, the atmosphere pulsed with energy. Mark stood backstage, moving to the rhythm of anxious beats within his chest. As he watched fellow competitors finalize presentations, an instinct to withdraw flickered at the edges of his mind. The whispers twisted into thoughts like calculations. What if he faltered? What if their project fell flat before the panel? Mark, Sarah's voice cut through his internal cyclone. You've got this. This is our moment. He met her gaze. There was an unyielding sincerity in her eyes, offering not only reassurance but also a challenge to overcome every lingering self-doubt. With that, the resolve crystallized within him, marking a divergence from the timid persona that had lacked confidence in his vision only days before. Spotlights ignited as the first presenter stepped on stage, and the exhilarating tide of apprehension surged again. Mark clenched his jaw, wrestling with the impulse to retreat into the shadows. Could he stand under judgment? Not just for the project, but for every ounce of effort he had put in. Yet beneath every wave of fear he felt a defiant pulse whispering, "This is your chance to rise." Upon their turn, Mark and Sarah embraced their prepared notes with poise. As he began to articulate their vision, a surprising clarity emerged. The key points unfolded, revealing the potential they'd crafted together. Each sentence strengthened his conviction, while the audience's nods knitted an invisible thread of connection. But just as the presentation neared its crescendo, a voice rang out from the panel, sharp and scrutinizing. How will you realistically manage this within the existing constraints of our company culture? Mark's heart plunged. The question echoed ominously, a reminder of hurdles yet to come. In that moment he felt the past rise up, whispering doubts about his ability to navigate scrutiny. Yet, Sarah stepped forward, seamlessly integrating her knowledge into an exceptionally strategic answer, showcasing their thorough research and preemptive solutions. It was as though their dual efforts created a barrier against doubt, a testament of unity that filled the room. As they concluded, applause resonated, but beneath the surface Mark could still feel the churning questions attacking the edges of his triumph. Had they truly convinced the audience? Would there still be a remnant of skepticism echoing in the back of their minds? As the panel murmured amongst themselves, deliberating the results, Mark pondered the future with a sense of electricity sparking in his veins. Regardless of the outcome, something in him had undeniably shifted, evolving into someone willing to redefine what failure meant. But as the tension hung, clinging to every passing moment, he questioned, what awaited on the other side of this contest? With the results looming, Mark faced a new crisis. Could he truly endure the specter of his past no matter the outcome? The chamber thrummed with a mix of excitement and uncertainty as Mark and Sarah retreated from the spotlight, the applause echoing in their ears. Mark felt buoyed yet anxious, entrapped in a limbo of both triumph and doubt. He had confronted his fears head-on, but the questions raised by the panel gnawed at his confidence, and clear-cut answers fled from his mind. "Did you see their faces?" Sarah remarked, eyes wide with enthusiasm. "We nailed that." Mark forced a smile, his mind still racing to unravel the implications of that one question. Her optimism was infectious, yet it felt like a fragile bubble against the tides of uncertainty swirling inside him. They meandered through the throng of competitors and attendees, their steps mingling with the fading echoes of applause. Yet, as they reached the waiting area, Mark's heart raced with a new urgency. It wasn't just about the presentation anymore. It was about what came next, how he would reconcile what he felt lacked in their approach, especially against the backdrop of the company's entrenched culture. Considering this shifted his focus inward, revealing vulnerabilities he had kept shrouded until now. "Mark, are you okay?" Sarah's voice broke through his reverie, her frown betraying concern. "Yeah, just thinking," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. He wanted to express the turmoil brewing in him, but grappling with thoughts of inadequacy felt like an uphill battle. The thrill of the moment was dampened by lingering questions, without straightforward answers. What if his ideas couldn't bridge the gap he sensed so acutely? The reality of their ambitious vision clashed with the restrictions that surrounded them. Mark could feel the gaze of a few colleagues, lingering doubts reflected in their eyes. It struck him that while he had just shared a brilliant concept with the panel, the road ahead was woven with threads of skepticism they both had to navigate. "Maybe we should," Sarah began, her gaze earnest, "address the concerns they raised more directly. We can meet with our supervisor and strategize how to integrate this feedback into our project." The thought flickered like a light in a dark room. It wasn't just about waiting for outcomes, it was a call to action. They could turn uncertainty into opportunity, transforming questions about their project into substantial growth. The shadows of doubt began to recede as he pondered the dynamics of that meeting. "That's a perfect idea," he said, newfound determination hardening his resolve. "If we can tackle this head-on, establishing practical solutions will not only strengthen our case but pave a path for future innovations." Sarah's smile returned, and Mark realized he felt lighter. Together they could illuminate the shadows of doubt. It was more than just a decision. It was the first step toward a new facet of his professional personality, one that thrived on challenge instead of retreat. As they stood on the edge of this personal and professional revival, Mark envisioned the meeting transforming from a potential pitfall into an empowering discussion. However, an undercurrent of fear lingered. Had they truly prepared for the different perspectives they might face? The awaiting results added to the tension swirling in the air, yet with every thought on how to strengthen their project, Mark felt emboldened to confront possible backlash. He steadied his heart and climbed the stairs towards the floor above, where their supervisor's office awaited. Each step upward wasn't merely a lead towards resolution but a promise to himself that he wouldn't shy away from potential conflict anymore. But what if the very defensiveness he hoped to dismantle knew strategies that could undermine their entire proposal? What awaited within that office didn't just involve a presentation of their ideas. It was a test of his very resolve to grow and lead amidst adversity. The moment of truth loomed ahead, and with it, Mark thought with trepidation. Could he navigate the complexities of not just an idea, but his own fears and limitations? As Mark entered his supervisor's office alongside Sarah, the atmosphere buzzed with palpable tension. He felt a rush of overwhelming anticipation, each step filled with conviction, yet shadowed by the echoes of criticism he had faced in the past. This was not just another meeting. It was a landmark moment tailored for accountability, transformation, and an opportunity to solidify his newfound identity as a capable architect shaping his community. Their supervisor greeted them with a curious glance but also a hint of skepticism. Mark sensed the weight of expectation resting upon him, amplifying his determination to present their vision with uncompromising authenticity. This time, it was not about just defending their proposal. It was about fostering a dialogue that could transform adversity into a catalyst for change. "Thank you for coming in," the supervisor began, a serious expression etched across his face. "I must admit there were some concerns raised during the contest. They made valid points about our approach." Mark's heart raced. This was the moment to face facts head-on, to turn perceived weaknesses into strengths. "We appreciate your feedback," he began, feeling the tenacity build within. "We've taken the questions raised to heart and want to propose actionable steps that not only address these concerns, but also enhance our overall vision for the project." Sarah nodded beside him, her unwavering faith fanning the flames of his resolve. They presented their revised strategies, highlighting community engagement, sustainable practices, and the inclusion of volunteer workshops that would breathe life into the project. With each proposal, Mark leaned into the values he had reconnected with: transparency, collaboration, and resilience. This wasn't just another pitch, it was the culmination of his growth journey in real time. As the discussion progressed, Mark repeated the message he had embraced. This project isn't solely about architecture. It symbolizes a rebirth for our community, just as it has for me personally. The words poured from him with sincerity, reinforcing the very essence of what he believed. To his relief, the supervisor listened attentively, nodding along and asking clarifying questions that reflected genuine interest. Mark realized they were weaving a partnership, not just a transactional exchange. A steady camaraderie began to bridge the distance that had once felt insurmountable, as they worked together to fortify the project's framework. Yet, amidst the encouragement, a familiar face loomed in his thoughts. His former boss. Although he had left unnecessary baggage behind, the scornful remarks still pierced his mind like arrows. But as he reiterated their new proposal, he pushed against that interference with each articulation, thereby framing the potential for success, not just as a possibility, but as a promise sparked by the collaboration he fought so diligently to cultivate. The pivotal moment arrived when their supervisor leaned back in his chair, assessing them thoughtfully before speaking. "I believe you're on the right track," he said slowly, a thoughtful consideration lighting his face. "Your passion and determination are clear. Let's evaluate how we can integrate these innovations into our framework moving forward." Mark's heart surged, a sense of victory igniting within him. In that moment he fully grasped the profound shift that had taken place, not only in their project trajectory but also within the core of who he had become. He wasn't simply appealing for approval, he was asserting himself as a key player in shaping his narrative. Days turned into weeks, but this time, they flew by with a sense of direction and purpose. Mark, alongside Sarah, engaged not just in planning but actively participated in rallying support from colleagues, gathering insights, and hosting brainstorming sessions focused on community involvement. The project transformed from mere aspirations into a living, breathing entity fueled by collective enthusiasm. With newfound confidence, Mark began redefining his interactions within the office, his peers reacting not with skepticism but with admiration. Often he would catch them nodding along as he articulated ideas, not out of fear or obligation, but from genuine collaboration. He was no longer an echo of past failures. He had established himself as a respected voice advocating for meaningful change. The culmination of all efforts arrived on a sun-drenched afternoon, when the council convened to review the revitalization project and vote on its implementation. As he stood before the assembly, Mark's pulse quickened, yet a sense of solid confidence anchored him. There was no trace of the self-doubt that had once paralyzed him. He was prepared to face whatever judgment would come. "Today we aren't just discussing a project," he stated, addressing the council with fervor. "Today we are rekindling the heart of our community and paving the way for a collaborative future. Our endeavor is about more than structures. It's about creating spaces that invite participation and foster unity." As he finished, applause erupted in the room, a blend of acknowledgement and excitement intermingling. Mark glanced at Sarah, who beamed back at him, both of them fully aware of the significance this moment represented. With the council's unanimous approval, he felt the culmination of his journey wash over him, a wave of profound accomplishment cementing his transformation. No longer a man defined by past dismissals, he emerged as a leader, a figure who had successfully carved out his identity while embracing uncertainty. Leaving the council room that day, Mark felt an exhilaration unlike any he had known in a long time. He realized this wasn't merely the accomplishment of a project, it was solid affirmation that he had evolved. He had definitively shattered the perceptions of his past, allowing him to embrace a path toward continuous growth and contribution as an architect, a visionary, and most importantly, a man who had fought to define his legacy on his own terms. And as that exhilarating light cascaded over him, Mark knew there was no turning back. He had conquered not just professional hurdles, but the intricacies of self-reclamation. Every doubt, every hesitation had amalgamated into this moment, validating his journey and propelling him into a promising future paved with resilience and the courage to embrace every challenge head-on. Now it's time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel to catch the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these empowering journeys. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Mark's incredible journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to join our community of true fans of personal overcoming stories.